Okay, so agenda for today. I think most of you should have received this agenda. Just some housekeeping items. We have some, of course, alongside our speakers, some of the biggest experts on the membership joining here today. So let's try to use the chat box here as much as possible. If you have questions, we can keep the discussion dynamic over the chat. We'll try to pause as well during some of the panels. So if you really want to chime in and just ask your question directly, we might be able to accommodate that. But yeah, so that's what we have envisioned. So today's session will also be recorded for further reference and follow-ups. And this is really what we plan to bring you today. So we'll start with WB Industry Report findings and trends from our CEO, Tiago Rodrigues. Then we'll touch upon 6G and Wi-Fi vision, a big day for the WBA as we work through the initial vision segment that we are going to drive then within a working group, together with Derek and Maria Cuevas from BT as well joining us. Then we'll move into next generation services with Wi-Fi 7 and Wi-Fi 8, with Matt from Cisco and Necati from Intel. And finally, just a roadmap we have for the year and ways for you to engage here with us. So with no further ado, I propose we jump straight into the first topic of the agenda. So let me just welcome Tiago here to the Innovation Forum webinar as well, and bring up his presentation. So Tiago.
Yeah, thank you, Bruno. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this Innovation Forum webinar, the first of 2025. I'm going to be brief. I just want to highlight one piece of research from the WBI, so the industry report. Our goal with this work is to give all readers an easy way to digest what is happening on the Wi-Fi industry, not only in terms of innovations and from a technology and standards point of view, but as well bring some research results and as well case studies from some of our members and partners that deployed some of these technologies in some part of the world, and they present that as a case study. I can share with all of you that the confidence in Wi-Fi is growing, and in particular, the convergence or the opportunity for Wi-Fi to work better with the cellular technologies is gaining some momentum in the industry. Is part of some of the highlights that we got from the research. And like Bruno said, the release of a 6G vision paper from the WBA today is a first step or one extra step in terms of bringing the different stakeholders to the table and promote this convergence discussion and understand how these different wireless technologies can work better. Now looking to some key highlights of the paper from the industry report. So confidence, as I mentioned, confidence in investing in Wi-Fi is increasing. Open roaming, as many of you know, WBA has been driving the open roaming standards. The momentum is growing. The number of deployments has been significant over the last 12 months, and the perspectives for 2025 and 2026 are very positive. We did some research in terms of the reasons why to deploy open roaming. You can see here a summary. So seamless access between Wi-Fi and cellular, followed by security on Wi-Fi and frictionless access as well. Interesting to see that the feedback that we got is network security and privacy is still the most relevant area from the companies that responded to our research. And as well, Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 7 becoming mainstream on the Wi-Fi standards. And as well, from the feedback that you got, a big part of the responses are looking to 6 GHz spectrum for unlicensed use as very important and important for their businesses. I have one more slide just to frame up and help create a bigger discussion on the rest of the webinar, that are the Wi-Fi predictions for 2025 and beyond. Definitely Wi-Fi 7 is in there, as we see the adoption growing and the number of devices with Wi-Fi 7 growing. And even recently on CES, we saw a series of announcements. 6 gigahertz spectrum expansion and automatic frequency coordination mechanisms, another big trend coming up. AI-driven network optimization, Wi-Fi and 5G, and of course 6G as well. Convergence will be part of the discussions. WBA open roaming, deep open Wi-Fi on the disaggregation of software and hardware on the infrastructure for Wi-Fi. IoT device connectivity, not only because of Wi-Fi Allo, but as well more use cases are coming up based on IoT. The concept of IPE first as a mechanism to augment capacity and operation capabilities, and as well greater focus on energy efficiency. And the last one, we see more deployments around municipality Wi-Fi, and in particular, we have a few big trends when that is happening, not only for IoT services, but as well with open roaming attached to those municipality Wi-Fis. So I hope that this summary of the industry report raise your interest on our research, and you can have a look on the industry report. Is available for download from the WBA website. If you didn't have a look yet, please download the report, have a look on it. Like I said, great case studies and great research data is available, and I hope this helps the discussion on the next topics on today's webinar. And with this, back to you, Bruno, and we can continue with the agenda. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much, Tiago. I think these trends, it's one of the reasons why our technical roadmap keeps on growing. So we have 20 plus programs for 2025. So definitely we need to, address some of these trends and continue executing. But yeah, so on that note, I think we can jump into the first agenda topic related with the panels. Taking 1 minute to appreciate the launch of our WBA6G vision statement. You have here the link. We'll also post it here on the chat. This has been an exercise over the last quarter of the previous year. I think, as always, what differentiates some of our work is the majority of the stakeholders come from different spectrums, from mobile operators, cable integrated, enterprises that have been joining the WBA. Then we have the chipset, device, infrastructure vendors, internet players, and it's a first stepping stone into a formal work group that was approved to work on the requirements. So this piece of paper you will see mostly 5 dimensions, where it promotes ubiquitous connectivity for all, practical solutions for industry challenges, cost and operational efficiency, targeted applications for impact, focusing on some verticals for starters, and of course, global collaboration and standardization based on the so many tentatives over the years to drive the evolution of these seamless and secure experiences. But yeah, so on that basis, I would like just to start introducing some of the topics here today. For those of you that just joined, we will have 2 lead panelists here with us, and then we'll just open for some questions and make this as dynamic as possible. So regarding the 6G and Wi-Fi convergence vision panel, let me bring the chair of the CTO group, Derek Peterson, and also CTO of Boingo. To maybe ask you, Derek, you built visions and manifestos before, so why we need the 6G and Wi-Fi convergence in your perspective?
Hey Bruno, and everyone, great to be here. Thanks for this. So I'm as everybody knows, I kind of try to push this forward back in 2014 with the manifesto on convergence, and I'm funny to say that because I've been doing Wi-Fi now for 15 years at Boingo. So I gotta say that I'm now, really just, an everything connectivity guy is what I became. And one of the key things that we're doing with these papers, and we're doing it at the WBA, and that fits well with what I've been trying to do, is really just focus in on how we provide the best connectivity for all the things that go on inside these locations that we visit. And a lot of times that means that we're utilizing these technologies together, whether it's 6G in the future and, Wi-Fi 7 and Wi-Fi 8 coming up, it's putting that together. But then also a lot of the new capabilities with these networks is private networks as well. And so for me, it's really just about focusing on that. I'm going to share later some of the things that we did at a location that I'm not allowed to say the name of it, but it's a sports stadium, and it has all those technology things working together, and it's really working well. So with that, I'll stop, and I know we're going to bring Maria in too. So please, back to you.
Oh yeah, Derek. Yes, thanks for setting that vision and allowing us to continue on this space. But yeah, I would like to bring Maria Cuevas, which is the Network Research Director for BT, and I must say that part of this editorial team and on the leadership, we had also J.R. Wilson from AT&T, Mehmet Ozdem from Turk Telecom, Chris Ols from Deutsche Telekom. So I really appreciate the journey and now the opportunity of having the operators that come from the cellular traditional side helping us to set up this vision. So Maria, I think you can explain us why this is so important and the perspective from you and BT.
Thank you, Bruno. And yes, I would like to start by thanking, I suppose, everybody who's been taking part in this vision paper. I totally agree with you. It has been a collaborative effort, and I personally see it as the beginning of a journey together, or perhaps the continuation of a journey. And just as Derek was explaining, convergence is not necessarily new to any of us, and many companies on this panel, and a lot of the standards organizations, including the WBA, but others, have already actually made a lot of progress in that space. What we're here to identify is where are we on that journey, and how can we continue on that journey to, as Derek highlighted, provide the best possible experience to our customers with the tools that we have at our disposal. Stop seeing these technologies as silos or perhaps different implementations, different networks, different services, and starting to see them more as, again, tools that we can use flexibly to provide the best possible customer experience. I've also been on this journey personally from my career's perspective for a very long time. And again, we can talk about later on what are some of the past experiences and perhaps what are the things that we ought to look to improve in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. So maybe going here broad, I see we have members joining from all the spectrums and also some external audience. Does anyone want to say why they believe it's important to have 6G and Wi-Fi vision and convergence? So you should be able to unmute if needed, or you can just type the questions as we go along. Okay, so feel free to chime in, but maybe on that note, yeah, looks like we have hand raised. Yes, Mark, thanks for another feature that can be used. So yeah, Mark, why don't you go ahead and kick off some of the external participation?
Yeah, Bruno, thanks a lot. Yeah, so I think when we look at 6G, at least when we've gone from a 5G pyramid to the 6G hexagon, we've got 3 new points added. We've got integrated sensing, integrated AI, of course, but then we've got the ubiquitous connectivity. And I think that's the first time we call out continuity of service. And that's covering both the sort of rural sparse. But if you look at ITU requirements, they also talk about deep in-building coverage. And so I think when we step back and say, well, how are we going to provide contiguous service as users move in and out of buildings? we've got to recognize the role of that in-building wireless system in being able to support those users, because if we don't have an in-building system, then we're, I guess, hampered by the penetration loss getting into the building, and we know we'll be operating at lower frequencies, sub 1 gigahertz, with lower order MIMO, smaller channels, and therefore there's candidly an increasing gap between that sort of indoor and outdoor experience delivered from the cellular network. And so I think the role of Wi-Fi is absolutely to fill that gap in being able to serve those indoor users and to be able to deliver those services whilst being deep in buildings. And I guess one of the challenges we face is, well, what does that look like? We recognize that we need indoor wireless systems to be able to serve indoor traffic. How do we marry this together in an overarching architecture?
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe Mark, on that note, I think maybe we can pick up some of your comments, and especially with deep in-building coverage and some of the solutions we have today, it seems that the challenges are still there. So maybe the second dimension to this work as an intro is, how can we prioritize some of these challenges and overcome them to really come up with more adoption? And eventually, if we have to work through standards, what are the key steps we have in front of us? So maybe Derek and Maria, I'll do a quick check with you, and then I feel we have a few questions from the audience as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we all know that the biggest challenge for us is to make sure that I would say it's the quality. The biggest challenge is the quality, right? We know that we can connect, and a lot of times if the 6G network there is, or the 5G network's there, or the Wi-Fi network's there, it's at the end of the day, we want quality. And then when you start from the quality perspective, you say, okay, I want a quality connection. Then you start maintaining that quality as you're moving, as you're transitioning from network to network. But it all starts with really that quality that you're supposed to have of the network. And to me, that's an important part that we're working on in the WBA. It's an important part we've been trying to work on, across all these different groups, is focusing in first on the quality. When we can make sure that you can always have a quality connection on Wi-Fi for upstream and downstream, that deterministic Wi-Fi that Matt always likes to always talk about. But if we can have that for phone calls, and then as we move from one network from outdoor to indoor, because we know that Wi-Fi is going to be a lot of the indoor just because of the way, it's cheaper to deploy, and eventually people are going to be able to do it. We get that quality there. It's going to be there. You're not going to put DAS, as Dean kind of said in the chat, you're not going to put DAS everywhere. It doesn't make sense. In fact, we're doing a lot of locations that we're doing these smaller locations. We're focused on Wi-Fi and actually a private network for offloading and sharing the network. So I wouldn't say a private network, let's call it a shared network. But to me, that's where it starts, is the quality. I'm dealing with an issue right now. Somebody in our board bought a new house, and they're like going, as soon as I leave my house, from my house to my gate, because he's in an area where there's no tower, it's dead. And he goes, how can I help solve this? And I was like, well, we can solve it for you, but you guys got to let towers in. Well, they don't want to let a tower. So you get into all these nuances, but at the end of the day, I would just say I want to be able to sit like I am today in a car, connected to my laptop in the middle of a freeway in Mesquite, and be able to do that. And I can do that. And I'm using what? I'm using a Wi-Fi and cellular together. I'm using, which is Wi-Fi, and I'm using cellular. So it works. So we built something like this that works. We just need to continue building these kind of convergent quality capability solutions to be able to give us that experience. So to me, that's number one, is focusing in on quality. And we're not there yet with Wi-Fi. I'd also agree we're not there with cellular. It's gone backwards a little bit. So there's some work to do.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. I'll just say that I keep sharing that 2024 quality was the word, TOX. So that's going to continue, hopefully, with even more sharp solutions and decisions. But Maria, your take here?
Yeah, I totally agree on obviously the quality of the experience being what is driving all this. And if we just dive a little bit more into what is needed to provide that quality of experience, especially as, again, our customers are not going to be static. And by the way, neither is the network. And obviously network conditions do vary depending on load and various other things. How can we actually make sure that the network selection is intelligent and dynamic and evolves with a lot of those conditions? We need to make it also policy driven so that it can actually provide a tailored user experience depending on the use case or the type of subscription or the type of customers that we happen to have, and essentially tailored to their needs. So I would like to perhaps dive into how can we make that intelligent network selection improve that into the 6G era. But avoiding, by the way, the additional cost and complexity that comes with things like, and I'm sure we'll move on to later, things like tunneling and the additional complexity and cost that comes with some of the existing mechanisms where there might be a need to rethink the way we've architected these solutions to make sure that we can actually have a win-win situation where we can implement intelligent network selection without actually a significant increase in cost, complexity, or inefficiencies in the network.
Yeah. No, Maria, yes, thanks. So I'll just comment that in some of the visions over the years, it's difficult to talk about ROI, return on standards implementations, but this vision really, focuses on that and tries to bring some clarity on what needs to be done differently. Thanks for that. And maybe let me just open here. I saw we had here some hands raised. I see at least Youssef would like us to chime in.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what was already said here and about the conversions. I think as we move in to 6G and beyond, and this started in 5G anyway, for in-building and even for transportation, it's going to become critical to leverage the same digital infrastructure to provide multi-technology, whether you do Wi-Fi or private cellular or your public network. That conversion will become critical because the packet transmit based on the application. If you take airport, for example, there's the back of the house, the IoT going to be on private cellular, and there's other, public network people going to get on the Wi-Fi. And then, of course, you have the public network where people enjoy the cellular. So really having that architecture that can enable multi-technology, not only drive the cost, but also having that quality of service and seamless experience, because people don't want to keep logging into one network, go to the other, log in. That seamless connectivity, whether you're outside, inside, and moving from one location to the other, it should be leveraging AI and machine learning to adapt that experience to provide the best solution for the user. So in some instances, it will be Wi-Fi, some others will be public network, and that's going to be, I believe, the critical things that we have to drive for. And it starts from open roaming and what have you, to make it really seamless authentication, because I think it's only a matter of days where that SIM is going to move beyond eSIM to make it really easy for handset for anybody to connect to whatever the technology may be. So conversion is going to be really critical moving forward.
Yeah. No, thanks, Youssef. Derek, you have a point?
Yeah, add something. One of the things I want to challenge here is this idea of network selection at all, because I think sometimes what we've always done in our industry is we always look at the network first. And so I sometimes think, when we gave over the handsets and then we ended up creating these marketplaces, you went and you got apps, right? And you got an app that did something, whether it's Netflix or WebEx like we're on or whatever. And these apps became available. And then those apps, we could download whatever app we wanted to use. And sometimes I think we focus so much sometimes on the network side, we forget that the apps each of them require a different, capability, latencies, et cetera, different quality of service paradigm. And if we kind of step back and we go, okay, what are the apps that we want, and how do we end up doing that? And that's how we build networks for venues now, right? So when I build a venue network, I'm putting in Wi-Fi, I'm putting in DAS, I'm putting in private networks, I'm putting in LoRa, I'm putting in Bluetooth, I'm putting in all these different types of networks, but I'm focused first on the app and then how that app needs to interact inside. Now, granted, I'm stuck in a venue, so I have control. And I can sit there and say, the private network went down for the seats in this stadium that need to be able to have a private network. They automatically switch over to Wi-Fi, and I built the code to do that. And so I know what I want to do. To me, that's, and I built it into the modem and everything else on that side. But to me, that's one of the things that I think where we got to figure out sometimes with some of our terminology is it shouldn't be network selection, it should be app selection for the network. And if we start thinking of it that way, I think we get into a new opportunities where you can go download a different kind of voice app, and that voice app may work differently than standard voice. And there's an emergency services app, and I know that always gets in there and all that. But to me, that's kind of one of the fun things that we think about. And I saw somebody over here going, who's going to control the call flow? I don't remember where it was in this chat. And I was thinking about what they were saying about controlling that call flow. And it's like, does Wi-Fi control it? Does the cellular provider control it? Well, it's whoever you get the phone number from, in my mind, and they should build an app that lets you work across of all those. And then instead of them selling you a network, they're selling you a phone number that you keep that works across all these different paradigms. Anyhow, that's just some thoughts to kind of throw it on its head a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. And we have been seeing that from some of our ongoing work on the 5G side, who controls the experience, and with so many policies and coming from different sides of the equation. I will just pick up on your sharing, Mark, and I see Derek, and some of the comments here from Dean, William, Carlos, Ruth, Richard. They start alluding to the complexity of standards that are available, and how can we really pick up some of the work to make it right for 6G, how ROI is really going to change. So maybe now that we launch this vision, we have a 6G project approved that all the members will engage, and we can liaise with peers like IETF, 3GPP, Wi-Fi Alliance, GSMA. What do you think this group should start addressing within the membership, and what type of deliverables do you see having the most impact?
Bruno, can I just comment perhaps while we're waiting for responses to that question in terms of areas of focus? I'm also trying to keep an eye on the comments, although it's hard because we have a lot of really good and important points. But I'm kind of, my response to some of these comments to do with, where is the ownership of the control? Are we centralizing some of this? Is that, and on what I mean by taking a step back and rethinking the way we've architected this system, is that I wonder if we have to move towards a more federated model, where we're looking at new business models and more collaboration across different parts of the ecosystem, where it's not necessarily a mobile network-centric view of the world, where perhaps the SIM is the only identity holder, or perhaps, again, authentication and control always happens in the same part of the architecture. But we know that there is a myriad of APIs, federated systems, and capabilities out there that we can actually leverage and reuse to have a much more, as I said, modular and federated system that enables different types of collaboration across the different parts of the ecosystem. And in doing that, I think we need to be very mindful of, first of all, trying not to duplicate functionality where we can avoid doing so. We have an awful lot of inefficiency in the system right now, where we actually authenticate the customers multiple times. If you're moving to a federated model, you can do that once and pass that authentication. So long as there is a trust relationship between the parts in the ecosystem, you can actually implement that. And there are many examples out there where that is already implemented and being very successful. So should we learn from some of those, if you like, paradigms or principles out there and rethink a little bit the way we structure our architecture? And as I said, avoiding duplication functionality, avoiding tunnels over tunnels, as I mentioned earlier, because that is, in my view, a key source of inefficiency out there. And also, again, avoiding perhaps a lot of the anchoring or even tromboning of the traffic over, again, more boxes across the network because somebody else is trying to stay in control. Can we actually do that by federating policies, by sharing responsibilities and accountabilities and so on? So for me, it's a principles-driven approach. And of course, from that, we can derive the specific actions and changes that might be needed in the architecture. But that would be just one way of addressing some of those very good comments that we're seeing on the side of the screen.
Mm-hmm. No, thanks, Maria. I think you just alluded to 3 clusters of work. You mentioned the business side, ROI, you mentioned reference architecture, and then collaboration with industry peers. So I think maybe that's already responding to what the WBA can do. Allow me maybe just to hear one more question from the audience. I see William Webb as his hand raised. William, please.
Thank you. So first of all, very much agree with the vision. I think it's a great vision. It's very much in line with some of the things I've been writing recently. So very pleased to see that. Have you thought about the idea of having some kind of a centralized sort of coordinating function? So rather than trying to tunnel things, which I agree is a very bad idea, or even trying to do authentication in different places and then trust each other, why not lift all of that to some kind of simplified function that sits above all these separate networks, which can handle authentication and other things? I mean, in a way, it's like WhatsApp already does, but much more advanced than that can then actually manage the traffic across the network. And to pick up on the point about apps, effectively can look at the apps that are running and then direct the traffic across the underlying networks according to those apps in the right fashion. So having some lightweight kind of entity that sits above the networks would seem to bring a lot of advantages.
I don't disagree with that. And I think that's very much in line with my point about federated architectures. Rather than trying to, again, authenticate the customer multiple times, can we actually federate and pass that perhaps responsibility on to? Now, one thing is obviously having a function in the overall system that performs that action. Another thing is who owns that function from a commercial framework perspective. And I think that's part of the desire to take that step back and perhaps marry up the architectural efficiencies with the realities of a commercial ecosystem that is increasingly complex. But we can, again, make it happen with APIs and federated models and things that already exist. We don't even have to reinvent the wheel. So I don't disagree, but I don't necessarily see that centralized function being necessarily the sole ownership of one or always the same entity in the architecture, and we should allow for flexibility. That would be my view on that, William.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's interesting, just Bruno, this is Matt. I look at open roaming and it is a federation and it is a way of federating the different identities. And in some of the comments that I'm seeing as we're having the discussion, this ability to move across different networks, there's different layers in which you would connect those together. So from an identity standpoint, I think we're looking to address a good deal of how you would take different kinds of identities so that you could roam across different verticals and even combine enterprise investment with what we see in the service provider investment. So, and I'll just make one other comment. I think it's key to use these technologies in their strengths. Wi-Fi and unlicensed came from one sector. 5G came from another. It's easy to recognize the value to 5G when you talk about covering an entire country, when you talk about high-speed mobility, when you talk about determinism. It's easy to look at Wi-Fi and the density of its deployments and recognize the value in the overall bandwidth that's achieved because of that density. And so we see these two technologies really thriving in their sweet spots, and now they're converging together. And so if in this effort to converge these technologies, if we also recognize what Dean often calls divergence, in other words, what are those differences and those strengths so that we can apply them appropriately to the applications and services that we have, then we can achieve something much more efficiently than what we've done in the past. We can actually provide country digitization indoors and out at the lowest cost per bit, which is what we all really want to achieve with access everywhere. So, you know, I think we've made some good progress down this road, and I think we'll continue to do it. I'll make one final comment. It's very hard to have a single coordination centralized entity because you get into exactly that debate, who owns that entity, because the access network, the device, and the identity holder often are trying to achieve different things. And so if we can combine a policy and an API implementation or a control implementation where we can meet the requirements of those players, then I think we can achieve this goal. For example, it's great. I'll take ANDSF as a previous example. It really failed because the operators were in control and the device vendors didn't like it. They wanted to be able to control the experience. But if we coordinate that communication between the two so that the device knows it has a say in producing the best experience, while at the same time the MNO can make sure that regardless of the access network you connect to gets a carrier class experience, then we have a win-win. So I think that's what we have to look at next.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, please.
Hey, JR, I'll just ask a question to the group. I mean, do you think that sometimes all of us, just given our jobs and our roles, that we think too much from like a larger enterprise or more mid-size enterprise perspective and above? And are we missing part of the equation? And I say that because it's like so easy to chase the next G. But the reality is there's millions and millions of small businesses globally, including Class A real estate globally, millions of square feet that still aren't connected. But we've got open roaming, we've got Passpoint. And my question is, have we done enough to educate venue owners, all these small businesses, et cetera, on what is Passpoint and the benefits of it? And have we made it simple enough so that we can just start with getting all these millions of square feet connected and then go figure out how we improve quality and use cases and all of that?
I think, JR, this is Matt again. It's a little bit of a catch-22. And I know that we've had a lot of discussions around this because as open roaming grows and the membership in the federation grows, the federation becomes more valuable with its membership, and it starts to generate mass and gravity to where everyone, just by nature of setting up a Wi-Fi network or an access network, would become a member. And we haven't gotten to the point where that gravity is significant enough to drive the entire market. We're seeing an incredible amount of growth, but it's not automatic. And we need to get to this point where as soon as you light up a Wi-Fi network that is going to offer a guest service, just as part of the setup, you would join a federation. And when that happens, and we can do that in an automated way, then we can capture all of those smaller businesses. Part of the objective of open roaming was to make it extremely simple to join a federation without having to build a back-end service and without having a coffee shop having to negotiate with a giant company like AT&T for access when AT&T doesn't care about a single coffee shop. But if you're both in the federation, then that link can be made. So
but the coffee shops and the restaurants and the Class A office space, they don't even know what open roaming and Passpoint is.
Yeah, I agree. We need to make it more obvious, and we need to have a button that says connect me to open roaming, and the back end configuration just happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so likely Jared and Matt, and I think you also answered the question how WBA can do it, and this is probably about a roadmap of actions and clear things we should be doing, like this angle of, okay, Passpoint solves part of the problem, but first iteration is to get it even more, broadly known and adopted as part of the 6G roadmap, because no one let's face it, relates, pass point with 6G yet. So that's maybe something we can start pushing.
Yeah, example. I own Fisheye Grill. It's the nicest restaurant that's within 20 miles of Plant Vogtle, which is the largest nuclear power facility in the U.S. And I have Wi-Fi running over Starlink, and my customers have 0 cellular coverage with all 3 carriers. And I try to make it as simple as possible for them, but I have no idea what open roaming is until JR comes in, explains open roaming for me. And now how can I, in like 2 hours, tell my IT guy, I want to go and enable Passpoint for all of my customers and have it done in 2 hours? We need to do that for millions of small businesses.
I do, and I agree with you, JR. I think it's an education thing. I mean, we've actually timed it at Cisco. You can join the federation in 30 minutes, but you have to know to do it.
Yeah. So it's a mix here of, let's say, easy button, like you said, Matt, and in the context of 6G, the easiest it is, the more likely that deep indoor coverage we were talking can, go forward. But yeah, I think, this has been, a great segue into the future project. So everything that was, shared here and some of the comments and reminder points, will definitely address them. But at this point, the nature of the Innovation Forum is really to start doing deeper dives as we go along. This topic, I imagine, will just keep on growing, so we should bring it back. But I wanted to allow some time also for the second part of the equation, which is, of course, Wi-Fi 7 that is becoming the dominant generation, but also Wi-Fi 8, talking about an Innovation Forum. And for that, we also have a panel with Matt and also Necati that has been leading most of our Wi-Fi generations. So allow me just to hand over to Matt to share 2 quick intro slides. So Matt, over to you.
Sure. Why don't we go ahead and go to the next slide? I'll try to be quick because I know we've only got 15 minutes left. So if you follow me at all, you've probably seen a slide where I talk about the road to determinism or predictable connectivity. And one of the reasons we wanted to insert this discussion with the previous is this issue that Maria brought up of trust. It's very difficult when you're talking to an MNO or a service provider that's providing access service to roam into a Wi-Fi that they don't own and operate without having any idea what the quality of that experience is going to be. Is it going to be carrier class, or is the Wi-Fi going to be worse than just staying on 5G, even with penetration issues? And this is a big concern. And so we've done a lot of work in open roaming and providing SLAs and the ability to intelligently authenticate into these access networks so that we can forward this what I would call these open architectures or loosely coupled architectures. I mean, why is it that a service provider is willing to go into a Wi-Fi that they manage versus a Wi-Fi that they don't? And there's multiple reasons. You can talk about security, but really it's about the experience. They need to make this experience seamless, and they know that they're going to get a certain bandwidth, and they're going to get that bandwidth at a certain latency. So one of the things that we've been working on for a long time in Wi-Fi is this road to determinism that I've been talking about, and Wi-Fi 8 is an extension of that. Now don't panic. I know you just started to buy Wi-Fi 7, but keep in mind that we wrote the Wi-Fi 7 specs a long time ago. In fact, Cisco just published a book on Wi-Fi 7. And we've been working on Wi-Fi 8 for some time. And the reason I wanted to bring it up is because as we go from Wi-Fi 7, you can see that we continue this determinism or this predictability mandate as we go into Wi-Fi 8. And the 2 key additional functions that we really see here is this ability to do multi-AP coordination and this ability to do seamless roaming. So if we go to the next slide, I'll just quickly talk about a couple benefits and we'll open it up for discussion. And sorry, I'm trying to move so quick. So what are the next generation benefits, and what is it that this multi-AP coordination is going to do? So multi-AP coordination allows APs that are on a common channel to be able to coordinate when they communicate using that air interface in a way that allows you to minimize any additional latency due to collisions and vying for that air interface. And what this means is that we can use much wider RF channels because we don't have to use the high number of spectral reuse that we do today when it comes to radio resource management. In other words, it's not uncommon that we would use 9, 12 different pieces of spectrum so that adjacent APs don't interfere with each other. That's hard to do when you start to get into 160 and 320 megahertz channels. You don't have that many channels to work with, especially if you're sharing it with other use cases or other networks, which often happens in Wi-Fi and especially in unlicensed. So what this allows us to do is to coordinate in such a way that we can get a predictable experience even when we have APs operating on the same channel. This also allows us to densify the number of APs that we put in. And if you densify, that means you get better signal strength. If you get better signal strength, you get better coding and you get better throughput, and all of those things follow through. So 8 is a continuation. Now, if you look at what's happening in the industry when it comes to spectrum, unlicensed is just that. Anybody can be there, and we're seeing technologies that are coming that we have to share with. VLP, CUC are a couple examples of these. These are peer-to-peer technologies where maybe a laptop is talking directly to an AR headset, or your phone is talking to an earpiece, or different types of really PC to PC or intelligent device to intelligent device type communications. And what's happening in the industry of unlicensed is that we're raising, or at least we're pitching into the FCC and other regulators to do higher power VLP. Well, if VLP gets popular and everybody's doing it sitting at their desk, then that VLP can interfere with the infrastructure network, and the infrastructure can interfere with VLP. So one of the things that we're doing with MAP-C is better coordination for coexistence issues, such that we can apply intelligence like AI and AI-RRM, so that we can move both of these use cases into the appropriate channels and maintain that predictability. The last one is seamless roaming. How do we improve the experience? It's one thing to be sitting in one place and say that we're going to apply Wi-Fi 6, 6E, Wi-Fi 7 technologies to getting that more deterministic, that more predictable, low latency, high throughput, high density behavior. It's another thing to maintain it when you have a mobile device that's moving AP to AP, or as you're going AP into cellular. So the AP to AP problem is also addressed with Wi-Fi 8. When we look at the ability to use things like MLO, which currently in Wi-Fi 7 uses 2 channels to connect to the same AP, leveraging something like MLO to connect to 2 different APs, so that instead of do break before make, you can do make before break, and actually experience no latency in the transition as you're mobile or you're moving across the network. So again, I think you can see the work that we're doing is a continuation of this predictable behavior. And if you can predict the behavior on a Wi-Fi or on an unlicensed network, then the service providers are going to be much more apt to trust these access networks, so we can do all the things that we talked about in that last discussion and converge enterprise with service provider and public venue with private 5G. And we can start to pull these things together, and we can move across these different access networks using multiple different identities with control over the policy that meets the requirements of the identity holder, the access network, and the device. So with that, I'll wrap and we can go into some discussion.
No, Matt, thank you so much. I think you just answered why Wi-Fi 8, why now, and of course this transition. So maybe I will just bring also Necati Canpolat from Intel that has been championing all these generations of Wi-Fi in the WBA with decoded papers, guidelines, trials. Necati, how do you see this transition, and why Wi-Fi 8 at some point in time?
Well, with the Wi-Fi, we have been going through this step function. Basically, when we look at the generation of Wi-Fi, it's starting with Wi-Fi 5, 6, 7, 8 now. We see that the Wi-Fi 5 was the high throughput, and then we brought the Wi-Fi 6, high efficiency Wi-Fi with the FDMA and better scheduling capabilities, and then we transitioned to Wi-Fi 7. Again, extreme high throughput EHD Wi-Fi, Now, with Wi-Fi 8, again, we're going to this more reliable, efficient Wi-Fi, which we call ultra-high reliability. Basically, it is going to bring the additional capabilities that is going to enable better and reliable connectivity experience that we just basically face in many, dense areas and different application and use cases and all that stuff that we are going to address. And looking at the timeline, the task group basically just was formed as of last year, 8.11 BF. And most likely the specification development and release and certification get in place somewhere around end of 2027, early 2028. And we have still a few more years. Basically, there are some questions probably why Wi-Fi 8 now. This thing takes time, right, to basically look into specification development right now. Currently, as of this week, IEEE is discussing these capabilities and features so that we could just agree upon what to put into the at least initial draft. The draft is going to be D0.1, the first release of the draft that is going to be most likely released in this quarter. Given that the exciting work is taking place as math powered quite a few things, really it is going to provide us the hooks and then additional tools to bring those capabilities into the space of AI ML, where we can basically get the power of Wi-Fi combined with AI ML and deliver really better experiences, better service around. Now, to be short, we have also completed the Wi-Fi 7 trials within WBA with the key operators, looking at the key use cases in enterprise and residential space. That in the residential case, we could actually demonstrate that the Wi-Fi 7 already delivers 3.5 gigabit per second. So this is actually multi-gig per second throughput that we are delivering. And currently, I think when you look at the fiber to home and all that connectivity, where you have multi-gig coming to the residential or the enterprise, the Wi-Fi used to be the bottleneck in some cases. Now with the Wi-Fi 7 capabilities, 6 gigahertz, 320 megahertz in a channel, we will be able to deliver over gig throughput for the entire home in many cases. So this is actually the amazing capability that Wi-Fi 7 already provides. From the WBA perspective, we are kind of early runner. We have initiated, or we have basically approved the Wi-Fi 8 project on WBA to basically look into early capabilities and use cases and all that stuff that we can basically look at how these key capabilities match to key use cases application from the WBA members' perspective, getting early insight to the industry and share it with the industry, as well as later on, we are going to look into Wi-Fi 7 Wi-Fi 8 early field trials with the participating members and share the results with the industry as well. Since we are running out of time, I have to cut it short. If there's any question I can take, thank you.
Necati, great summary, and I'm just including here the link for those of you that have not engaged yet. We also provide here the online location of the Wi-Fi 8 scope. So let me just open to one question from the audience. I think Jesse, you have your hand raised. Okay, I'm not sure.
Yes, I did. I actually just kind of typed my question in the chat, but really it was around what provisions are we putting into the specification to allow for seamless handoff between Wi-Fi and cellular, and then eventually to maybe direct to cell for satellite coverage as well. But the reason I bring this up is that currently the user experience during these handoffs is a bit of a pain point for customers as well as the operators, and figuring out different technologies or adding technologies to allow for more control of the operators, such as ATSS within the spec, I think would be helpful for the industry. And Mark, Matthew, it goes kind of along the lines of potentially using this transition as a make before break mindset as well, instead of breaking your Wi-Fi connection before you hand over to cellular.
Got it.
Shall I take that one? Bruno, is that okay? I totally agree that there are existing mechanisms in 3GPP like A2SSS to ensure a make before break approach. And I would also agree that there are some applications that require such approach. I think one problem that we've traditionally had, and I've been guilty of that perhaps in my career as well, is perhaps assuming that that is required for every single application that the user requires. So perhaps again, and in my point about taking a step back and rethinking this architecture, perhaps we ought to think, when is that necessary? When do we need a make before break? When do we need things like IP address preservation to ensure that the experience of the user is seamless? And when required, yes, of course, we can maintain those mechanisms. Perhaps if it is a little bit expensive, it is worth actually doing that for that particular reason. But let's perhaps not assume that that's always the case, because that can actually be adding complexity to an awful lot of applications that no longer require IP address preservation, perhaps because they can actually react to a change in IP address. So I think your point is correct, but I also think that we need to perhaps explore when is that necessary and when is it not needed. Don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with that in general. Like, I don't say every application needs it, but in general, voice applications might benefit from this. And certain applications are part of that user experience are when you're leaving your home and trying to get onto a data connection, and just even if it's loading up Google Maps, right? You see that transition. It's not going to be ubiquitous across all applications, but I would think most applications would be able to benefit from a seamless handoff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Jesse and Maria. So I think, Jesse, you brought kind of the hybrid situation between the first topic and the second topic. So that will be definitely part of the scope definition as we go forward with these projects. But maybe as we approach the top of the hour, and I know there are some meetings coming up right after, at least for us at WBA, I would really like to thank all the panelists from today. We'll consider deeper dives, and all the questions were stored here on the WebEx. So yeah, thank you so much, Tiago, Derek, Maria, Matt, Necati, and all of you that participated today. I'll just end by providing a note on the newest roadmap of the WBA. So these projects you can see here today, they are already featured and approved. There will be working groups doing deeper dives and coming up with these technology features, roadmaps, eventually some decoded papers to help moving things forward. This is open for participation, leadership, so do not hesitate to contact us. Finally, on the Innovation Forum, this is a cycle that will continue. So we have a website for that. We have a roadmap. So if you want to get involved by any means, contact us at the PMO. We'll find ways for you to engage. But yeah, really appreciate everyone's time here joining today. It was a very good session, and wait for our feedback and next steps. Have a good day, everyone, and see you soon.
Bye.
Thank you so much.